This is another episode of Standup Comedy, your host and MC, celebrating 40-plus years on the fringe of show business. Stories, interviews, and comedy sets from the famous and not so famous. Here's your host and MC, Scott Edwards.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the show. We have another exciting interview for you. You've heard this gentleman before. We did a great interview last year. He's got many, many years of experience as a stand-up comic, huge success, lifelong career in comedy. But in recent years, he put together the Entertainment Max booking agency. And man, this guy's doing everything. He's booking colleges, military bases, clubs, casinos, you name it. Very successful, and I wanted to talk to him about all that success. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Barry Neal. Barry, welcome back to the show.
Oh my God, listen to that ovation.
Yeah, you know, they're so excited to have you back. Your first interview was amazing. We talked about your career and your comedy. We even shared one of your comedy sets. But today I wanted to talk a little bit about the business. You and I have both been on the fringe, in your case, in deep with the comedy show business for the last 40 years. And I thought we could maybe share some information with the listening audience that not only would be entertaining, but maybe even a little educational. Sorry, I know that turned some people off, but interesting stuff. So first off, Barry owns Entertainment Max, a booking agency, right, Barry?
Yep. We book a lot of performing arts centers and a lot of casinos and military bases. So corporate events. So yeah, we pretty much book all over the country, and that's what I've been doing. You know, focusing. You know, it's in terms of, I don't want to say my career, but you know, as I've stopped going out and performing as much, I still do. You know, maybe 10 weekends a year, but it's not like the 40 that I was doing. So I had to make some money, so we started up this company, and I love it.
Well, you've certainly got a knack for starting a company. I've checked out your website. By the way, everybody, entertainmentmax.net, if you want to check it out. But you are doing so much for the industry, because not only are you a booker of comedy entertainment, but you've expanded and you're doing some music and bands, even variety acts like Hypnotist. Was that just a natural part of opening an agency, or did it come as you worked and met more and more people?
You know, that's a great question. It really started as just sort of a natural evolution. We were booking a lot of colleges, and the colleges would say, "Hey, do you have a hypnotist?" And I'm thinking, I don't know any hypnotists. But then I started just going, sure. And then, you know, I would just, you know, I'd started researching it, and, you know, you find one that you like. And, you know, now I always just go, "Do you have it?" I go, "Yes, I have monkeys that can juggle," and I find it. You know, my job is really just, it's a lot of times for kids or just people who don't have the time to actually, you know, do the research. And I get it. You know, people are working full time, they're students full time. So it's like, "Hey, do you have an inflatable slide?" We did a mechanical bull recently at a military base, because they don't have time to research it. So I research it, I find it, and, you know, do whatever I can. So that's kind of, it was the natural progression of the company. We do bands, but mostly just bigger bands, and only because it's like a lot of times, you know, bands, local bands, they're local and they're fine, but you know, they're a couple $100, and it's not, that's kind of not worth our time to go, "Hey, here's a local band for $300 and we make, you know, $30. That's just not worth my time." So when we book bands, more often than not, it'll be somebody big like the Beach Boys or Clint Black, and that'll be for our performing arts centers.
Yeah, that's cool. And when I was doing, when I owned my clubs, Laughs Unlimited, for those that have been listening to the podcast know this, I was doing a lot of special events for organizations, and I ended up owning Art Pasta, which was a jazz club. So I was booking music on a almost nightly basis, but it deepened my depth of my Rolodex, you know, the people I could work with. And one of the things I found I ended up booking a lot were actual orchestras, where, you know, it's more money, more people to coordinate, but that the kind of corporate stuff, they want that full music sound. They want that kind of elite experience of a full orchestra. And that was all kind of strange for me because I'm a rock and roll guy, but I learned so much and had so much fun doing that. The music that you're booking for the colleges and military bases, and you said some corporate, did you find that that was as easy as booking comedy or a little more work?
It's a little more work. We just signed a contract with a casino in Arizona. So they're doing comedy on Sunday, but bands Friday, Saturday. And I've been doing comedy a million years, so I know comics, and it's part of the comedy. It's part of a 5-day run, so it's really easy to book the comedy. The bands, it's more of a, because I'm just not as experienced, so I literally have to go online. I'll find bands that are playing like venues that are analogous to what I'm booking, and I'll see all the list of names, and I don't know any of them, but I figure, if you're working at this place, you're clearly good enough to work here. So it's more of,
but you're using, Barry, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you're using your knowledge of entertainment to match organizations to entertainment. And I think that's a gift that me as a producer and booker and you as a agency owner have to really be able to develop, because you were wise enough through your experience to know that you don't want this kind of music at this kind of event. You have to kind of have that innate wisdom or knowledge to put the right things together, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Because I don't have the experience with it, I really want to find venues that are doing what my casino is doing in terms of, hey, they're playing music from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. They're just doing it in Laughlin. Mine is in, Blue Water, Arizona. So it's like they're doing the same thing. So so all I have to do is get in contact with these bands, say, this is what I'm looking for. I research their videos online. I'm like, yep, that's perfect. They're probably in the same price range because, when you've been doing it a long time, you kind of know what the market value is. And so, it's just a little bit more work just because I don't have a Rolodex. But, as I book that more and more, it's, maybe it'll be a year, 2 years, and I'll have a Rolodex of, 50, 100 bands. It just takes time.
It does. And I find it fascinating. And I think what's really interesting is if we wanted to put producing, or in your case, being a very professional booking agency, but really what it comes down to, besides knowing who goes with what, it is being able to connect people, whether it's an organization with a comic or a hypnotist with a college. You're the thread that brings it all together. And that used to be a lot of fun for me. It can be a lot of work though, too, right?
Yeah, it certainly can. Right. I'm sort of the liaison between the two parties. And, you really want to make sure both parties are happy. I just got a corporate event and, they want a certain type of comic, and, they're in, I'm trying to think of what city they were in. Oh, they're in Enid, Oklahoma. So, I mean,
find that on the map.
Yeah. They're an hour outside of Oklahoma City. So it's like, there just isn't, a lot of comics and I'm just like, look, I said, we can do this one of two ways. You can fly a comic out, and put them up, and it's going to cost you X amount of dollars, or we can find a local one who, and I just said it is, frankly, they're not going to be quite as strong, but you get what you pay for, though. Yeah, right. And that's, I guess, if I were to say anything about the business, is that you always got to know what the budget is, because I don't want to waste time. I've early on, I'd be like, oh, we can get this comic and that comic, and they're like, oh, well, we only have $500. I'm like, okay, all the comics that I mentioned won't work for $500. So, it's just a huge waste of time until, you can sort of pin down at least a ballpark figure of, are we talking you're going to pay 1,000, 5,000, 10,000? Because,
it makes all the difference. It really does come down to budget. I mean, my job as a producer is I'm booking fundraisers these days that someone says, okay, we want to do a show. And I'll go, well, the minimum is $2,000, and I can get you 2 acts and an MC for that. But if you want a name act, it's going to be $5,000. Or if you want more acts, it's going to be this. and they're always, well, not always, but they can be shocked at the expense, but you have to keep in mind the housing, the travel, and the fact that we're working with professionals, people that make a living. It's not like getting Uncle Bob that told jokes at the Christmas party,
Yeah. And they really don't get that. It's just like, there's so many of these, even the casinos, they're like, oh, well, we're going to pay this amount. I'm like, you're 12 hours away from Los Angeles. I said, there's just not, for someone to get out there, unless they want to drive 12 hours, they have to fly to your airport. And I go, right there's $400 each way, each entertainer. So now that's 800. And I said, put in some gas a little bit. I go, it's $1,000 just in cost. So,
your
said,
$600 budget at $1 million casino isn't going to work.
Yeah, right. Even 1,000, because they're like, oh, $1,000, that's a lot of money. I'm like, that's what it costs for them to get there. I said, now what are you going to pay them?
Right.
So, and look, to be fair, I get for a casino, it's like, they have budgets within departments that they have to stay within. And most of these casinos don't charge or charge very little for comedians to see the show. So it's like they're never going to make their money back. And that's frustrating because a lot of the new people who have taken over casinos, you're trying to explain to them, if you can get 100 people in paying $10, that's $1,000. So granted, we may be charging you $1,800, but those 100 people that are in the casino are there to gamble. That's the whole bottom line. You're never going to make money at the door at the casino. That's never going to happen.
Yeah, I do a lot of work with comic magician Larry Wilson, who used to do a lot of casino work, and he said that the new generation of management sometimes misses the big picture, that the whole idea is to get people in and gamble. That's why there used to be free buffets or, the $5 buffet with steak and free shows. It wasn't that they cared about losing money on the food and the entertainment. It's all about getting the money on the tables. And some of the newer generations of management are kind of missing that, but we'll see. One of the things I wanted to ask you about, if you don't mind, Barry, is that you're booking everything from comedy clubs and casinos, which are pretty freewheeling, to colleges and corporate, which have to be fairly, well, not fairly, definitely clean. Both of us have had the experience of working with entertainers that are professionals and clean and can do TV, radio, and corporate and never drop a word. And then we've both worked with guys that can't get through a 3-minute bit without 5 or 10 F-bombs. What do you?
Yeah, I'm gonna step in just for a second. If anyone is listening and is a comic, do not send me a video in a 5-minute video and you're dropping 5 F-bombs because you're not working for us, and I don't know who you're working for. So if you're going to send a video, please take out the F-bombs, because God forbid I hire you and a corporate, for a corporate show. I've had this happen where I've hired someone for a corporate show. They go online, they check them out, they see a video, and they're like, yeah, they were too dirty. And at that point, it's too late to pedal back and go, oh, that's just one of their videos. They can work clean. In their head, they don't see it that way.
Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of that.
If any comic is out there, take everything offline that is dirty.
Wow. That's so insightful, because, most of these people, especially when they're paying the bigger bucks, are going to check out somebody. I've certainly, when I'm booked some fundraisers, had to send videos and bios to them for some committee to approve first. And of course, as the producer, I don't send something unless I know it's perfectly clean. But you're making a terrific point. The comics themselves need to make sure that their online presence shows what they can do under the most stringent circumstances. Yeah, when you get to a comedy club, you can loosen up, or maybe at a casino show. But if you want to make the money, the big money in corporate or TV, colleges these days, you got to be on your game, right?
Absolutely. You got to be on your game. You got to have good social media. And, again, because we're so politically diverse, I guess, would be maybe a good way of saying it. Take that stuff off social media. I've had a comic be fired because he was ranting, online about, stolen elections and just, QAnon crazy stuff. And you're just like, someone saw it and they're like, yeah, we don't want that representing us. It has nothing to do with his material, but he's online on his social media post talking crazy. And it's like, okay.
Yeah, that's an interesting fence to walk, because on the one side, you have freedom of speech and you should be able to share your opinion. However, on the other side, all of us know in the working world that if you want to get paid from somebody, your whole existence is brought to bear. I'll give you a great analogy. Someone's paying $2,000 for a top line comic, and he shows up in a t-shirt and blue jeans. Yeah. Right. They have a black tie event going on and this guy strolls out like he just left the beach. That doesn't work. And sometimes these comics don't understand that if you're going to be a professional, you have to present yourself physically, looks wise, material wise, as a pro.
I absolutely. Comics have to understand there's accountability, and everyone does. It's like, there's a freedom of speech, there's a freedom of what you want to wear. But you know what? Work in an office that says, I used to work in an office when I first moved out here. I was 20 years old, and there was a mandatory, you had to wear a tie. What am I going to go? I have the right not to wear one. Yeah, I do. Not at this company, I don't.
Right. The people paying the money set the rules.
Yeah, they set the rules. So it's like, if a college or whatever, or a corporate is like, you know what? You're free to say whatever you want online, but there's accountability. So if you're going to say crazy stuff online, someone at that company would be like, yeah, I don't really need that here.
Right.
Again,
and it's gotten a little...
Kanye has...
Go ahead.
I was going to say, Kanye has the right to say whatever crazy stuff he wants about Nazis or whatever, but there's accountability. Adidas doesn't want to have anything to do with them. There's a perfect example of a corporation going, yeah, you can say whatever you want. We're not going to criminalize it, but I don't want you representing my company.
Right. And hasn't it gotten extra difficult right now with the colleges and the whole woke thing? Barry, as a booking agent, how are you threading that needle?
I think woke has really been overused a lot. I have a son in college, and I ask him, like, how much wokeness is there? And he goes, like with anything, he goes, yeah, that you got the few people who are like, hey, it has to be he, she, that. But you know what? By and large, they just want funny. Now, having said that, it's almost like the military. There are certain rules. It's like, we don't want gay bashing. We don't want anything about rape. So it's like, and like I said, they make the rules. And for me, it's not a problem at all. And I just think for most comics, it's not a problem. I think colleges can be a little bit more because they are so, liberal, righteous, that you just go, it's a joke, relax. This is all meant for comedy. But you know what? To me, it bends both ways. You talk about going to an area, we book a club in a town that's very conservative. And boy, if you make fun of someone who's conservative, talk about having a stick up their ass. It's like, folks, it's comedy. You don't.
Oh, right. It doesn't matter if you're liberal or conservative. If you can't do a joke, it's on you. I mean, I've often had discussions with people that were like, well, they said this or said that. And I go, well, they're laughing at themselves. And two, it's comedy. Hello. It's like people would go to a comedy club and complain. And I'm going, what are you doing in a comedy club if you're that thin-skinned,
I did a show, and my opening act, she gets a little bit risque and sexual. And the woman walked out with her 12-year-old. And she's like, this is completely inappropriate. And I thought, yes, for you to bring a 12-year-old to a comedy show. You're right. It is completely inappropriate. What are you thinking? What parent in their right mind brings a 12-year-old to a comedy night?
That's just, it is so funny. And they don't take responsibility for their part of the whole indignation, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I mean, I really try to, as a booker, let people know, like this corporate event that we're doing in Enid. It's like, look, it's going to be PG-13, but I said it is adult comedy. So I said, if it's a Christmas party and there's kids, bring a magician. She goes, and so for this one, there aren't going to be kids, but it's like, people sometimes they go, oh, it's going to be a Christmas party and they're all adults, but you know what? There's still kids at the party, and it's just you just can't have 8, 9, 10-year-olds in a comedy club.
And as a booker, you need to know the demographics of the event.
Yes, great point, Scott.
To really fit the show to the group. Is it 20 people or 2,000 people? Is it in a state? I mean, is it in like a hall, or is it in a club, or is it in an arena? All these factors fit into the whole booking aspect, and people like you and I live it every day. But it's incredible how the people that are looking for a show seem kind of clueless. I had a comic tell me recently that they were getting paid huge money. I think it was $5 or $10 grand to do a corporate show. And they showed up and there was no stage, no lights, and no audio. They thought they'd just stand and yell at people that were at, eating dinner.
Yeah.
And it's like, and it wasn't like a $500 gig. This was like, a huge gig. And the people that were producing it thought nothing of the presentation.
Yeah. Like, they also think sometimes comics bring their own microphone. I'm like, yeah, that's not a thing, just so you know.
Imagine a guy showing up with, remember the old Mr. Microphone with a little...
Yeah, right. But I go, we don't bring microphones, we don't bring lights. You got to have... And as other than the demographics with how big is it, but also, I also like to know demographically, who's going to be there? Are we talking husband and wife? Like for company parties, if it's going to be spouses, then that's going to be a different comedian than if it's going to be, no, it's just people from the company, and it's, no spouse. Then I'm like, okay, how old are they? Are we talking 30 to 50, 50 to 80? It's all things like that are very important.
You're so wise in what you're doing, and you show your breadth of experience, because I always try to get the demographic of the show, but I don't know if I've taken it to the detail. But it makes such a difference. I mean, if you have a group of construction workers and they're 98% men versus the local church where it's all the Bible study groups and the women, they might both have a 200-seat audience in a nice format, but a totally different show, right?
Yeah. I mean, because I'll book a lot of times myself if it is a husband and wife and it's a little bit older. But yeah, sometimes if they're like, oh, no, we're a young, hip, cool company, it's like, well, that's not me. I mean, I'll bring there's a lot of young, funny, hip comics. That's not who I am.
Yeah.
And it's just, you want to make sure you get the right fit for that company, so they come back to you. I mean, that's the thing. You want that trust that the company.
Yeah, that you want as a businessman, you want that gig to go through you every year. So
exactly.
You expressed how you had a couple bad gigs, and what you could do is burn a future client, and that doesn't benefit anybody, the entertainers or the booker. Before we leave the subject of clean versus dirty and woke versus what you can do maybe on a comedy club stage, I was curious what you thought, generationally speaking, how comedy has changed. For example, Don Rickles was a classic in our generation, but between race and woke and everything, he would not last on most stages in today's world. How would you compare the comics that you and I grew up with to what you're dealing with now as a booker?
Great question. I always say great is great. And I think Don Rickles, almost like a Bill Maher, as long as people know what they're getting, they're fine with it. I mean, there's a lot of people out there who are, you look at Daniel Tosh or Anthony Jeselnik, Sarah Silver. I mean, these are people who are not woke. I mean, I don't know which way their politics is. I don't care. But they are very edgy and very inappropriate. But you know that going in. So I don't I don't want to be the old man yelling at the kids on the lawn. Well, in my day, I think if you are great, you will find your niche crowd. I mean, look, there are comics that we both know that were not political, but they've become part of the MAGA tour. And that's fine. Listen, they found their niche and they're doing, the right wing, comedy tour, and they're making a lot of money playing stadiums to people who just want that right wing. And it's completely politically incorrect, but that's what the crowd wants, and that's fine. So I don't know if Don Rickles wouldn't do well. I think
depends on the audience, is what you're saying.
It depends. It depends on the audience. I think people. Look, Bill Maher, we booked him. He sells out. Now he's not everyone's cup of tea, and if you went in not knowing who Bill Maher was, you might go, yeah, that's not for me. Yeah. Or Daniel Tosh, Anthony Jeselnik. So many of the people who are, very much on the edge, very edgy.
Right, right. The Bobby Slayton, even Amazing Jonathan at times, and some of the others, Jack Marion. There was a few guys that were edgy in a different way, either through attitude or talking about sex or just being edgier, politically speaking. But if you gave the audience a heads up, like you said, now you were saying one way. I used to say, hey, funny is funny. In other words, if somebody's talking about sex, or even if they're dropping a couple F-bombs, but it's funny and it fits the audience, that's what was important to me. Yeah, again, you got to know who the audience is. I mean, comedy clubs are going to be okay with it. Casinos are a little bit more finicky. We have a casino that says no F-bombs because for them, like we talked about, they don't want anyone leaving the comedy show and leaving the casino because someone's dropping F-bombs. So they're going to be a little bit more bland, and I tell comics, it's like, look, you just can't do it. They're like, oh, it's a funny bit. I'm like, they don't care. What they don't want is people leaving the casino. So if 99 people are laughing, but one of them is leaving, that's not okay with them because that one person is worth $100 in gambling. Yeah. I'm going to give you a little admiration. I think one of the things that is a truism about booking agents and the job you do, you have to be brutally honest, right? You can't blow smoke up someone's butt and say, oh, well, maybe you can get away with this. And I'm talking both the buyer and the talent. You can't, beat around the bush. You got to say, look, it's this, and this is what it is, whatever it is, to both the buyer and the talent. And that kind of honesty can sometimes be difficult. But I know from knowing you, Barry, that you're gifted at that.
I mean, you try to be I try never to be mean to anyone. I really do. I love it when new comics they try to get into our system and stuff, and I'll call them up and I'll say, you're not ready yet, and here's why. Here's what you can work on. And whether you take a class or you don't take a class, to me, that's how I want to be treated. I want to know, when I was starting out, and you were always kind enough to put me up when I was just, a young pup. I want to hear from people going, I don't need to hear every bit. That's funny. That's not funny. But I want to hear, you're not right for our crowd, or you need to clean it up, or that's too hacky. That's fine. You got to have thick skin, and you got to be able to tell people, it's like, look, there's just, there are certain things that are going to prohibit you from working. And if you don't want to hear that, then that's on you, I guess. Because I have to be honest, and that's the only way I know how to be with people. I don't want to blow smoke up their butt.
But you're actually helping them. I mean, not a lot of them, but some of them don't realize that you're actually helping them. But honesty really does make a difference. And I also wanted to add to that you, as a booking agent and as a professional entertainer, have taken it a step farther. And I want to mention it again. Anyone that's listening that has any interest in show business, remember, it's a business. It's a transaction of a monetary value for talent. And that business side is what we're talking about, whether it's showing up on time, dressing appropriately, having the right material, doing the time you're expected to do. It's all about being a pro. But you, Barry, have taken it to the next level. On entertainmentmax.net. You actually have some training for both talent, but especially for the buyers. Like, event planning and contracts and budgets and locations. I was so impressed that you were putting that information out there, because as I alluded to earlier, I often get asked, hey, I want to do this, and we got, 150 people, and our budget's $300, and, can you get Seinfeld? And it's just, I mean, your site is offering training that can be so valuable. Tell me a little bit how you got that in there and why.
Almost like what you said, I get those people who I want Seinfeld or I want this. So, I just try to make it for my clients or prospective clients to go, here's what you need to do to make a good, we call it making a good show great. And it's like you talked about, there's got to be a stage with lights. And I don't mean lighting someone up above, so you're lighting the top of their head. They've got to light the face. I said the room has to be in relative darkness. Just all the little things that make a good show great. You want to see people, laughter builds from front to back. You had a comedy club. Now yours was always full pretty much, but you want to, if you're only going to have a half room full, then you want to put it in the front of the stage. You don't want everyone scattered throughout the room.
Oh, the worst is when they put a dance floor between
the moat, the comedy moat,
between the stage and the audience, because we might have 10 people dance later out of 2,000, and they put I haven't heard that term, but it's so true. It's like a moat of silence. It takes away from the energy. Yeah.
So what I want to do is I want to make it a good experience, because they may not have ever done comedy before. So I say light, sound, and seating are the three big elements. If you have all three of those, you're going to have a good show if you book through my company, because I'll get you a professional comedian who's right for your demographic, and they'll be funny. But if you don't have that, a quick story, I booked a casino in Indiana, and I went out and met the client, and they said, we had Brian Regan. I'm like, oh my God, Brian Regan. And for those who don't know, he's one of the best. And I said, how did it go? He goes, not good. I go, how does Brian Regan not do well? And he showed me the room. I go, this was the room. It was like just a bingo hall, and they had a buffet. So he was standing in front of the buffet while people were walking behind him eating, going through the buffet. And I'm like, you paid $70,000. It wasn't through my, but that's roughly, what he's getting, in that ballpark.
Yeah, he's good.
And I'm just like, what made you, I just said, what, you don't want to be rude to the client. I'm like, why would you not put him in a theater? They're like, room wasn't open. This was the only room. People really wanted him, but it just didn't work out. I'm like, yes, because you can't have people walking in front of Brian Regan, who's not even on a stage behind a buffet. It was so bizarre to me. So that's why I really wanted to put all that information.
I think it's genius. And by the way, I just want to shout out my affirmation that lighting, sound, and seating are all three important keys, but I might also add staging, just because there's some people that expect that a comic can stand up on a chair or just stand in the corner and do his stuff. I believe in some quality.
Oh, absolutely.
Even if it's just 6 inches, there's got to be some sort of platform so that the room has the focus point of the entertainment. But light, sound, and seating are key to making any event successful. Well, what you're offering on your website is so valuable. I hope people go check it out, entertainmentmax.net. It's great information. You've had so much success, Barry. What do you see happening the rest of 2023, and what are you looking for in 2024?
Just to keep building our repertoire in terms of getting what's called block booking. I know you're familiar with it. If you're not, it's with the price of flights and rental cars. It's hard to book one night in New Mexico. So what we try to do is we try to block book, which is book 3 or 4 different rooms, on a tour. So there's a Thursday in Albuquerque, a Friday in Mescalero, a Saturday, so it becomes more cost effective for not only the venues, but also for the comedians, that they can fly into Albuquerque and not just do one show, but do 3. So I'm trying to work on that.
You're trying to educate everybody that saves everybody money and time, and it's so valuable. Those mini tours can be such a lifesaver. I told you I do a few fundraisers a year. Whenever I get the date and the act set up, we immediately go into where else can we put them in the region. and try to diffuse the cost of the travel and make the trip not only worthwhile for the talent, but maybe save the buyer a little bit of money. Great advice. Ladies and gentlemen, Barry Neal, and go with his motto, let's make a good show great. Check out his website, learn about lighting, sound, seating, and if you have time, staging. And Barry will make sure that your event is very, very successful. Barry, I know you're doing comedy clubs, you're doing casinos, corporate, which is huge. I know a lot of the people listening are involved in companies. You can refer Barry Neal's company, and colleges. Where's the work going mostly right now? Oh, military bases, right? Also, you do a lot of military.
We do a lot of military. They do a diverse thing. I mean, we'll book for military. We'll do some comedy, but they do a lot of hula nights. With the hula dancers. They do a lot of murder mystery or casino nights. So they're a little bit more. They don't do just comedy. They'll only do maybe one comedy show a year. So I'd say most of the work right now is in casinos. We're I'm sort of trying to do a little bit more into the performing arts centers where I'm a booking agent, but I'm not really a liaison, so to speak. And the difference is because I'm like in Lancaster here in California, I'm their official booking agent. So now my job is to negotiate. So I'm kind of a negotiator on their behalf because we'll book Angela Johnson, very funny comedian. So my job is to talk to the agent and go, we want Angela, and they quote their price. We counter with, hey, we're willing to pay this. So I enjoy that too because it gives me a challenge because I love the negotiating part where I feel as though I don't want my company to get, my client to get ripped off because they were just paying. If you're not savvy, sometimes agents, I'm trying to put this delicately, they're not bad people. They have a fiduciary responsibility to their client. So they're, if they can get $100,000 for their client and someone's willing to pay it, then that's great. Now, chances are their client would take $20,000. So my job is to make sure you don't pay $100,000 for a client and you pay closer to what market value is.
Well, and so I'm going to add a little more indelicate and say some of the talent out there has to be careful because there's some managers and agents that, okay, you want $1,000 for your to go out and work, and instead of taking the normal or 10 or 15%, they were turning around and charging the clubs or the buyers $2,000 or $3,000 and pocketing the difference. So you do have to be smart, and I think that. We didn't touch on it, and we'll have to have another talk sometime, Barry, but you're right. Dealing with the negotiations and the contracts are another important part of this show business that we are both in. And when it comes to producing shows, whether you're the buyer or the talent, if you're not up to par when it comes to negotiating and contracts, you need somebody like Barry Neal or some of these other talented booking agents to support you. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I guess what I would say for a lot of comics out there listening is you have to be your own agent and manager because nobody is going to take you on. I'm not an agent and I'm not a manager. I'm not bonded by the state and I'm not interested really in managing. So you have to be your own advocate until you get to the point where you have so much work that you can't keep up with how many offers are coming. And that's when you go to an agency, or an agency may find you. And I'm talking legitimate agencies, the WME, William Morris Endeavor, Creative Artists, UTA. I mean, these are the big agencies in LA, and they have great agents, but they're only going to take people on if they can make at least minimum $5,000 a show. They're just not interested if you're a traveling headliner who doesn't have a name, kind of like a Barry Neal. They're not going to take you.
As much as you might be making $2,000 a night, which is great money, but it's not worth their time.
Not to them.
Yeah,
right. Not to them. It's not. So you have to be your own advocate. You have to go out there and hustle the work. If you think Barry Neal or Scott Edwards or whoever. It's just it's not worth my time or your time, Scott, to go, hey, I'm going to help book a guy for $500 for the week. It's like, so what? I make $50. I mean,
yeah.
I could make that betting against the Bears,
Yeah, no. Well, tell you what, this has been fascinating. I think we've shared some valuable information for both buyers and talent. And Barry Neal at entertainmentmax.net. Be sure to search him out, whether you're looking to book that fundraiser or gig. And talent, if you want to know what it takes to make it to professional level and what's expected of you, Barry's laid it out for you. All the training is there. He's there to answer your questions.
Yeah, I teach a comedy class. So I'll just give that a quick plug. And we do talk about the writing, but also the business of comedy. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, hey, I'm interested, the first class is a free audit. Email me, Barry at entertainmentmax.net, and go, I heard about the class. Tell me more about it. Because it really is, at this point in my life, it's about training the new comics. And I guess I know we got to go, but you asked me a question I never got to, but I thought about this the whole time.
Sure.
What's the difference between when I started and now is there aren't the same amount of clubs. And when I started, Scott, how many clubs were there in Sacramento? 5? Oh,
yeah. There used to be clubs on every corner. It was like freaking Starbucks.
And now there's just not. And now the clubs a lot of them are just using big names as headliners. So the difference is you could be the biggest hack, and make a decent living in the 80s. You can't do that anymore. Now you've got to find your niche, be true to yourself, strive for greatness, not just I want to go on the road and make good money, because that money's not there anymore unless you're headlining and doing good, really interesting things. And then you really can break through because there's so many more formats, whether it's Netflix, there's so many shows out there that are looking for funny people. But my thing would be, is the difference now is there's not 1,000 clubs that you could just travel and do it. There's maybe a couple hundred clubs and casinos here and there. So it's focus on being great, because being good anymore, it's not good enough.
Well, Barry, I know that's tough advice, but great advice. You have to have a strong work ethic. You have to work at your craft. You have to always be growing your talent. And bottom line, you have to be a professional to be treated as a professional. And hopefully some of what we talked about in this conversation has been helpful. If not, reach out to Barry at entertainmentmax.net, and he's happy to help you. But like I said, go to his website. There's some great training information. And, just to throw in a plug, or go to Amazon and get my book, 20 Questions Answered About Being a Stand-Up Comic.
Yeah, listen,
get my own plug in.
Get your plug in. For those who don't know, Scott Edwards, he ran some of the best clubs in the country. Everyone loved playing it. You had the biggest names there. We both have been around the block. There's no shame in sometimes asking people who have done it. I that's my biggest problem with some of the younger comics is just they're like they know it all. They don't want to ask the people who have done it. It's like, we've been there, we've done it.
Youthful arrogance, right? Youthful arrogance. I had it. I got to admit it's out there.
Sure. So did I.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, that was Barry Neal, not only a terrific friend, but a lifelong professional comic who now runs Entertainment Max. If you get a chance, listen and share this podcast with anybody interested in the business. They'll learn something. Barry, thanks so much for joining me today.
Always a pleasure, Scott. Happy holidays to you and your family.
Thanks so much. Ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We'll have another great show next Sunday. Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Stand-Up Comedy, Your Host and MC. For information on the show, merchandise, and our sponsors, or to send comments to Scott, visit our website at www.standupyourhostandmc.com. Look for more episodes soon and enjoy the world of stand-up comedy. Visit a comedy showroom near you.